I've missed one of my season ticket games this afternoon. But Castleford will come up later. And I'm also a massive steam engine nut. Unfortunately, my dad thinks these are incredibly boring. But some years ago, going on 30, I had a ride on a steam engine at North York Moors Railway, and that were it. That's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and I've been lucky enough to do it, in part. In 2006, I became England's first female mainline fireman, so instead of pootling about at 25 mile an hour, I was barreling it in at 70 mile an hour, which suited me fine, but I'm now too old and fat to do that. So I've hung up my shovel. And this is what I do for a living. Yeah, you're right, I don't work for Lloyd's Bank, but this is where you sell your soul to Satan, because during lockdown, I work for the East Lancs Railway in Greater Manchester. Anybody me? Yeah. Put your hand up then. Thank you very much. I think you've got some free tickets. That's why you've been. Yeah. Right. We're a 12-mile heritage railway. We're predominantly steam engines, but we have got quite a lot of diesels as well, but we don't talk about them. Well, during lockdown I sold my soul, because let's face it, there was no visitors. Well, there was nothing to do really. So while I was sat at home drinking my wine, Lloyd's Bank said, could we borrow Flying Scotsman and do an advert? And I said, yes, thank you very much, but you're going to pay for it. So they did, and it's the best bit of PR work we've done. Because it emptied their bank, I mean, it filled our bank account up, and they got this beautiful scene on our railway, and the horse as well. So it is, every time I walk down, there's a Lloyd's Bank, the front picture in the window is the East Lancs Railway with Flying Scotsman. I've had 2 years of my life working for this engine, which my dad thinks is the most expensive piece of heritage scrap in the country, whereas everybody else thinks it's the world's most famous steam locomotive. It normally comes for winter maintenance back to the East Lancs Railway. It belongs to the National Railway Museum at York. Anyway, it's a match made in heaven, and I am very, very, very lucky, because I've been all over the country with all sorts of engines that money can't buy. This is my family. This is Liam. Liam is named after a Castleford Rugby League player, and the one on this side is Dave, because he looks like a Dave. He looks like a useful sort of a cat.
Well, Dave Fowler, after Fowler.
Well, it might actually be that, but my dad's called Dave, and there's loads of people called Dave in the world, and they're always really good. And my Dave looks like he's a useful plumber, so he got called Dave. This is where we live. It's actually in North Yorkshire, but the nearest landmark to us is good old Drax Power Station. Used to be Europe's largest coal-fired power station. Ain't anymore, it's on biomass, because we keep nicking all the coal for the railway. Anyway, that big blob of greyness in the middle is my dad's greenhouses, because he's got 7 acres of land, of which half of it's under greenhouses. But he won't let me in. I have one Dahlia patch. I've sort of converted my mum into having a collarette patch in front garden, but my dad doesn't know it, but we've got plans for the rotavator. We had an early induction into Dahlias. This is my sister, isn't she cute? I got accused of being her mum the other day. I wasn't very happy. She's 3 years older than me. Anyway, that's my sister. Very early induction into Dahlias at Darlington Dahlia Show in 1970 something or other. And this is us in my dad's Dahlia patch. Now, my dad used to live in Swaledale. It was about 1,000 feet above sea level. He grew dahlias and various other bits, but he was actually at a coal mining stock near Castleford, so you can see the allotments type showing culture coming through there with his Uncle Reg. But that's us in the Dahlia patch. I'm the cheeky one at the back. And a few begonias as well. I dabbled a bit in begonias, but he did used to show at Darlington, and he certainly showed at Richmond. And then, unfortunately, he changed career completely, moved, and handed it on to somebody else. But look at this handsome fella. This is me dad in 19 something or other. And this is what he actually changed career to do. He used to be an insurance man, fitting a few, and then decided that he was going to take on this Land Settlement Association plot at West Bank and grow lettuce. And this is all I ever wanted to do with my life. Grow lettuce. And my dad won't let me. But this is what he actually ended up doing. Eventually he told Asda they could shove the lettuce where the sun don't shine. And actually started growing South African orchids. And he does it really quite well. He's very modest about it. But he did 22 Royal Horticultural Society shows. And out of the 22 we got 22 gold medals. And he got 3 best in shows. So he hadn't done a bad job really. But he'd never go to Chelsea because it involved putting heat on in the greenhouse. So you can see how this is going. He's let me have a tiny bit of this, what is his orchid greenhouse, for the propagating bench for my dahlias, but that's it. Forget it. We won't mention your haircut. But overall, they are absolutely gorgeous. But my dad became a bit of a dab hand at breeding these, cross-pollinating them, got loads of awards from the RHS for best diseases, best orchids, all sorts of things. So he set the benchmark for me impossibly difficult because he's the man to please and I can't do it. So, I've got some staff on. Now, Tracey on the left-hand side is the security person, and she's fairly useless. And the right-hand side, she was made for Jubilee, but actually she used to sit at the gate and look after the donations in the bucket, because I thought, psychologically, if there's somebody there, they're not going to nick the money. So, yeah, even had a royal visitor. This is Garden Lad, he's fairly familiar. He's known as the Garden Lad, probably nationally now. He's always moaning about his wages. Don't mention his haircut. And he hates collarettes. Let's just get it. He absolutely hates collarettes. This is Lady at the Big House. She's the one that we've got to please. She selects the dahlias on what's keeping and what's going, purely because she coordinates what gets sold at the garden gate in the bucket. So we've got to keep her sweet. And we're also so very grateful because she's the catering manager. So if we ever get a packet cake, we down tools, because it's got to be the proper stuff. But we're very grateful to my mum for looking after us, because every time we go showing, we've got enough food for about 6 weeks, so we're fine. And this is my tutor. Anybody recognise him?
No.
No?
Cancelled.
That good old Mr. Fowler, bless it, he won't come today. Git. However, Mr. Fowler was the person that my dad originally gave his 1980, whatever it was, dahlia stock to, and set him off growing dahlias. And how I knew Mr. Fowler was that I was best mates with his daughter Louise at school. Best mates. Mrs. Fowler used to work with my mum and dad. Absolutely fabulous, except a few years after I'd been playing about with my steam engines, I came home and started growing a bit of stuff in the garden, and took a bit of garden at my dad's, and I took some flowers to a show at Beverley and I won novices, which happened to also win Best in Show. And there was a whisper that got back to Mr. Fowler that a Parkinson had won at Dahlias, so he came round and said, I'll give you some proper stuff. Well, that's great. Mr. Fowler became my bestest bud. We've been all over together, and he spent far too much of his life trying to teach me how to grow miniatures without covers, and I've ignored him. I got distracted. There was better things on offer, and I kept meeting this strange man in a car park at Crooklands that had a van full of exciting stuff. And I wandered off a bit, and then I found collarettes. Bless. Anyway, love him, Mr. Fowler, he's brilliant. But he spent far too much time in my garden trying to teach me, and I've ignored him. So, how we grow dahlias. Basically, we've got a load of pot tubers. We try and get them going, except we've got to ration the electric, because we're from Yorkshire. So, some of these are on my mum's stove in the kitchen. Some of these are actually in my spare bedroom, because my dad won't allow me propagator on. And then the field tubers actually do go in a large propagator. But all in the background is my dad's orchids. Don't think that's mine, it's my dad's. Few more in the pot tuber division, all labelled up. He won't let any collarettes, or daisy-eyed rubbish as he calls it, anywhere near Propagator. And this is how I've cornered the winter storage facility in my dad's greenhouse. He's put me some benching up actually, which is a good job really. Just trays with a piece of hose pipe over the top, fleeced over. That's as near as you get for heated accommodation at my dad's. That goes for house and all. And he's made me a little bubble wrap bed, which has a warming cable underneath, which we put field tubers in, and then hope for the best. But it is hope for the best because, well, last year we had one that wouldn't start at all, and we left it in there, and this year when we put the heat on, it started growing again. Where's it been for a year? Had it had a nap or what? Anyway. Finally, into the propagator before we tray up and take out. It's all very unsophisticated stuff. These are my seedlings, planted en masse, literally scattered in the tray. And then when it comes to, well, we saw them about the 16th of April, and I think Gordon Hodgson's responsible for that. I think that was a discussion at Richmond show once. About when you saw them, and anyway, who's actually grown Dahlias from seed? Go on, stand up, stand up. Well, what? How shameful is it for the rest of you? What have you been doing? You've been relying on everybody else to do the hard work. You've done some.
I know.
Don't be shy. Anyway, I've brought some packets of my seed. They'll all be collarettes, so don't get overly excited. But if you want to have a go, there's some packets of seed. Please take them, because it is the best thing you'll ever do, other than drink wine and watch rugby. Right, when it comes to planting out, lovely my dad's backfield, particularly when he had a rotivator. We started out doing a bit of veg and a few, well, all sorts of flowers really, and then we decided, my dad used to grow seed for a Dutch seed company on gigantic great sauerkraut cabbages, and they used to grow it through black plastic polythene. So I thought, oh, we'll nick a few rolls of that. So we've now done it out in black plastic. It has advantages that the weeds don't come through, but when it was red hot, the first year of lockdown, well, we just about fried everything because it was just reflecting off the black poly. There's a gigantic great pipe down one side from my dad's tank at the end with a trickle line feed, and that tank gets filled up with all the water that comes on the greenhouse roof. And secretly, in the background is my mum's pavilion. It's not a shed, it's a pavilion. But we've tried netting, we've tried stringing, and gradually we found nets were just such a faff that I've fostered my nets off to Mr. Fowler. But we've gone back to string. I think it's a bit more controllable. But what a faff on. Literally last weekend of May, start planting out. 2 weeks after that, we don't do really very much of anything else, apart from go to work in between. Yeah, no, garden lab's good. So, yeah, again, get some height on your dahlias, more string round, but there is a catch with this, and that comes to the cutting division. Because when you've strung them, you guarantee the stem that you want and where you put your secateurs is exactly where the string's going to be. So I've had to buy him some new string as well. It's rubbish. But in the background, my dad's greenhouses, those two were empty. I keep asking to be in, but, you know, got to be favourable because I'm not the landowner. So, how I ended up showing, Mr. Fowler took me showing, my dad wasn't having any of it, Mr. Fowler took me showing, and actually I think I turned up at Harrogate and John Bottomley was the person who wrestled me into membership of the society. He was fantastic at doing it, and that was it. I was in showing, except I wasn't particularly brilliant. I won the novices at Harrogate in 2012, and I didn't realise that's actually 10 years ago this year, so don't I feel old? But what do you do after you've won the novices? Because there's an awful lot of learning to do between novices and anything else. And I had to fill the time in somehow. I was still going to shows with Mr. Fowler and he was still teaching me everything, except I was going, oh, I like the look of that. And I could have very easily been swung into the giant veg game. But I resisted. I grew some big onions, made marmalade, and did baskets of veg, collections, displays of flowers, anything to fill in the time and the classes for showing. So that's what I did with while you're learning, doing a bit more. We've had some right mishaps, but don't mind. I then eventually got onto baskets because actually I could use what I was growing that won't actually show perfect, but learn the staging technique from doing baskets. And my mum was a dab hand at this because my mum was, once upon a time, she'd gone to floristry school and she was instructing me on how to do it. And the first time I won the basket class at Harrogate, I did it with miniature cactus. And since then I've gone off miniature cactus, I don't grow them anymore. Because I fell in love with these instead. That's Jack Gott's fault. But the actual precision of staging for baskets, I think this is a masterclass for anybody who wants to learn staging, is have a go at baskets, because it's so hard to do and much, much underappreciated. That's clearly, I've switched it off. I don't know what I've done here. What have I done? Yeah, no, it's disappeared. It's there. Am I there? Yeah. Anyway, after I've been prattling around with baskets for a while, I got drawn into the water lilies. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you? And then poms. And of course, poms are really, really, really difficult to grow for show perfection. They're the hardest little things. And I mean, I've got a few that I really love, which I class as the underrepresented pom class, that are lovely, but they can't hold their head up. They're all over the place. But actually, you can do some really good staging stuff with the stuff that you can't generally show with. And we had a bit more of a prat on with these, doing different designs, and then we got on to, my dad gave me the challenge that I had to win the basket class with my own seedlings. So that sent me off in a different direction. But this one on this side, that one was a practice one, but this one on this side, 90% of that was seedlings that were out my garden. Some of them look like they've got very familiar parents, but that set the standard that I was after. That one's all, oh, yes, that's all Jack Gott's babes. But anyway, 2017, I came second in the Pom Championship at Harrogate. Second. And this was a marginal points difference. However, I had a master tuition lesson from Ian Sutherland in how to stage poms, because I had stems that were 6 foot high. They'd have been brilliant for cleaning cobwebs off the ceiling, but I hadn't done it. So, thank you very much, Ian, but he gave me a masterclass in that. But actually, what was more important was I won the intermediates the year after. I took the trophy home and I took it to bed with me. So I'm a bit sad like that. I gave it to Mr. Farrell to take back next day. I was just so chuffed. I was like, oh my, I'm now in with the big boys. Wow, brilliant. But, same year, my seedling, little Ernie, and I called it after Ernie Corkwell. He won the Ernie Corkwell class. You had to give it a name, so I called it Ernie. Why not? It's still growing, and it had a really nice year last year. The year before it didn't, and it's got a terrible habit of nodding, and it likes to look down. But last year it hit its head up for some reason. But anyway, still my favourite. It's pink. What more can I say? So then COVID came, and what did I learn in COVID? How to drink more wine, and actually to appreciate your garden for what it is, not about all showing. And it was the most luxurious time for sitting in your garden, listening to the birds and looking at lovely flowers. And I think I've probably gone again. But anyway, me and my mum, we drank quite a lot of wine. Still do. But we also had a training year. And me and my dad said to him that we were going to have, in my mum's new pavilion, of course, we were going to have our own Dahlia show. And my dad, which one's which? Who selected which side? Dad's or mine, please?
The one on the left.
One on the left's my dad's.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're right, because he doesn't like collarettes. But anyway, this is where we learn an awful lot about staging, because my dad's is all staged in stems, and he's going back to the days of Dick, when they didn't have Oasis, and they used to use reeds for staging Dahlias. So my dad had a practice at this. But anyway, my colour, that's number 7, by the way. Number 7. We started on seedlings for collarettes, giving them numbers. And then we started giving them letters, and then we got completely confused and bored with it all, and started giving them ridiculous names. But we also tried with a bit of fertiliser, bit of feed here and there, and what did we get? We got some poms that were, well...
Strapped in your ring a bit.
We needed to file pom ring down a bit, so, yeah, that taught us some things.
I filled the ring.
Yeah, but not without touching.
Oh.
Anyway, that brings me on to my seedlings, because that was far more interesting that year. My seedlings. Right, okay. These are literally bred by the bees. They are out of the rows of collarettes that I've got, and the seed head's taken off, dried out. On a cold winter's night when there's nothing to do, I make my mum and my dad take all the seeds out of the husks. They love it, really. But yes, this one's named Sammy. That's after my sister. It looks quite a bit like Passionbunga, but I think it's actually got a bit more about it. But I've only got one tuber of that left, because let's face it, if you're growing seedlings or dahlias, the best thing that they want to achieve is death. They've succeeded this winter. I've got one tuber of that left. Whew, this one's actually gone. There's nothing left of that. But if you want to have a go, I have brought some seeds. Number 7. Number 7's my favourite. Last year this was saved because I sent some to Liz Appleby, who sent me it back because mine died. That's all I want to do. And actually they're all the time, Dahlias are trying to be absolute gits because they want to go back to what we originally came from, which was quite a tall, leggy plant. Single form, and all the time they're just trying to revert back, but ultimately they just want to die. But that's Danny. So number 7 was named after Danny Richardson, who was a player at Cass. This is Truman. He made it, and I see he's made it onto the board at the back. Yeah, that's it. Oh, I've pressed the button again.
That's a good job, you.
Yeah, you know,
Don't have a much to go to. This one's Shenton. He's now left to go to Wool. Shame really, innit? But never mind. Single form here. This got rejected. Ultimately this got rejected, but because it was pink, it had to stay. It'd be nice in your garden. I mean, it's not out spectacular for showing. But this one, I quite like. And my mum's got onto the naming committee now, so we haven't got ZZ and AB and CD and everything else. But she called some of them Robin. Well, we can't have Robin because that's a Hull Kingston Rovers rugby league team. We can't have that whatsoever. So she's nicknamed this Comet. Whether it'll stay as Comet, I don't know. But that one I actually quite like, and I am trying. I've got 3 tubers of it, and I'm still trying to get it to sprout. Right then. Ultimately, 2021, me and my dad were like, well, we've been a bit bored, haven't we? Should we go showing or not? Nah. Shall we? All right then, we'll go. Pickering wasn't on. It's August Bank Holiday weekend. We're not going to Pickering because I can stage my Dahlias, go to railway, come back, see what I've done at knitting and sewing, and then clear off home. All done in 20 minutes. However, we set off to go to Midlands, which is very lucky for you. Ian should have had his arse spanked because we were had some brilliant stuff in the car, but we spent 5 hours in a lay-by near East Midlands Airport. Very nice, the airman came, and there was some really lovely slow bushes in the edge back. I wonder why. But anyway, you had a lucky escape because the airman brought us back home. So, we set off in my big car to go to Scotland. My car's a Citroen C1. Now, talking about cutbacks on accommodation and expenses for cars, a fill-up for my car is currently about £41. However, it doesn't make a great camper van. As my dad found out, it was eyeing up the bins in the car park at the Hall at Scotland. But what did we learn by going to Scotland? We learned an awful lot. They've got the scabbiest crows in the world, because we see them down the seafront. Get a bigger car, which I've just swapped it and got exactly the same, because I won't pay for anything bigger. Book a hotel, we're on your bed next time. And how not to transport ponds. We got there, and everything was bashed well, because it was squashed in, including my dad. But there we go. But we didn't do very well in Scotland because that man, Mr. Gott, was in the basket class. And he set the standard. However, what we did get, we came second in the ponds. Now, this was a momentous occasion because this was the first time we'd got Happy Blue Sea with a middle in it. It was the first week. We were like, whoa, it's now or never. So, they did look quite, don't you think they look quite reasonable? Not bad.
Is it difficult to get a decent brood then with that?
It is, it loves, it's right, big, thick, juicy green middles.
Now you tell me, I've just got one, Dave.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful if you can get them out of it. But it's quite hard to get them. So then we set off to Wisley. Now, I'm sorry, Mrs. Nash, I'm sorry. I have entered Wisley a good few times and never turned up. Purely because my dream has been to win the basket class at Wisley. And I've never had the confidence to go. And it's only because my dad took me to Scotland, or I took him to Scotland, that we thought, actually, should we? So we did. So, we entered the pond championship expecting to get absolutely hammered, but you've got to have a bit of luck on your side. And the basket class, I wrote an essay for some management training course about my life ambition, and my life ambition has been to win the basket class at Wisley. And I wrote this out in very much about detail in my imagination, because I'd never been, and I lived it. However, transport this time was a bit bigger. We had a spacious, my dad's car this time, and 2 camp beds. My mother's brilliant, she took camp beds on about classy accommodation. Never mind hotel, you lot. What's up with the camp bed in car park? I was a bit damp, but, you know, it's not the point. The greeting we got was to meet these 2 fellas, and he's here, there. Chief Trouble Causer, Dick Vickers, yes, and Neil Cawood. We were so glad, because it was somebody from North. So we were happy about that. We felt a bit settled. And then we met a certain Mr. Richard, who actually showed us what to do with that green snotty staging stuff that we didn't know about putting it in dry. Did anybody else know about putting it in dry? No. We'd been practising, but no, I ain't got the technique for that. However, it is really, really, really hard to stage ponds in whatever you want to call it, the substitute material. So, because my dad had been frugal enough to practice with his stems a wee while back, he was set to, as a garden lad, fill in all the pond vases with staging material, which is basically collarette stems, pond stems, wedging them in, and then having to stage between. So, the pond class, my entry, was all staged in pond stems that my dad had put in the vases. It had zero cost, perfectly biodegradable, but what a whole acre of a job. No wonder Dave Gillen grows giants, because I fully appreciated why he did. Because it was 5 o'clock when I went to bed in the car park, by which time it was quite damp, dewy. However, 100% biodegradable, slots in beautifully. If you get it right, they're going really well. It's just without 2 people to do it, you are going to be there forever and a day. But that is the staging alternative if anybody wants to have a go. It's really cheap. And what did we learn from going to Wisley?
Did you not show any membership card for your 30%?
Well, when we went to Scotland, we learned that a breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning from Greg's for 2 sausage butties and 2 coffees came to £4. So I said, I'll treat you to breakfast, Dad, as soon as he's done all the driving. £27.40 later, and the lady said, would you like a receipt? And I was like, I don't really need reminding of it. But after I'd actually picked my, day up a bit, I've never seen such a price.
Tracey,
Hello?
did you get your exhibitor's discount at the till?
We didn't know there was
Now
one.
you tell me.
Don't upset me.
You should have expected £7 in.
I think it's only 10%, but yeah.
But it's still £2.74. Yeah. She did ask for the receipt, and I said, no, I'd like a defibrillator, please, because I'm about to carve it on the price. It was a very nice cafe book. Anyway, we eventually get round to what we'd done. And you know, you've got to have a bit of luck in your world. Well, my luck was that Stuart Clenzy had packed in growing ponds. It was the luck that I needed. Granted, I've always fancied beating him, but he'd retired.
He's a face for that.
Yeah, so this is the happiest I've ever seen my dad in his entire life. Especially because I'd just paid for breakfast. But it was actually so, I was quite filled. I was a bit emotional, but I was also particularly sweaty because it was about 900 degrees by this point. However, we won the pond championship. Whether we'll ever do it again is a different matter. Whether we'll ever go again is a different matter. Please, Mrs. Nash, forgive me if I enter and I don't go. But I was so pleased, and I was so pleased for one particular pond that I think is much underloved, and that's Little Small World. It's a long time since she's been, actually. Oh, she's gorgeous. But there's a few others that have since decided that they don't want to grow. So good old Mr. Hall's got all his prize money back in buying a few more at Ivers Ronda. Don't forget. It all gets recycled eventually. So, I'm pond champion. First time mentoring. I now know why Dave Gillen grows giants. All of them lot in stems. I was a bit tired and a bit sweaty. But anyway, moving on, look what else happened. My little Sheila's Pinks, which is named after my Auntie Sheila, by the way, because she's a bit wild and she hasn't had her hair cut for the last 700 years. And this, I thought, actually resembled, because it's quite, wild.
Pink ribs.
Pink rinse. And little Comet had decided that it wanted to do something as well, so I was quite chuffed with that. And my basket. Granted, I'd seen bigger baskets in a soap dish in a hotel, but we made a good effort with the basket and we battled against the snotty green stuff that we didn't really like staging in. So, that rounded up Wisley. Loved it. Absolutely fab. Too hot. We moved on to Harrogate. Now, I'm on Northern Committee, and it was decided that me and my sister would do Northern Committee's display for Harrogate, except my sister jibbed. Granted, she was in Old Royal Infirmary, that's not the point, she jibbed. Absent without leave, with all the ideas and the instructions in a red. So I'm like, great, Trace, crack on. So 4 trips from home, back to Harrogate. Anyway, it turned out we did alright in the end. It wasn't bad, but I kept sending a photograph. Is this alright? Is this alright? Is this alright? Getting instructions back. Overall, she'd done a good job for us. But, I have to say, they're all my flowers except one vase, which happens to belong to Mr. Fowler, and I was really grateful that he helped me out there, because I was getting a bit desperate. And then I had to go home and cut my own to come back to Harrogate, in between going to a rugby match that was online, and then go to Harrogate. So it was all a bit of a long day, really. However, what happened at Harrogate? Can anybody remember? Did you go? I don't know what happened in the water lily class, but I ended up, well, I didn't think they were particularly very good, but anyway, I got a red card. Fine.
They're only ones without the embryo buds.
Yeah, I know. You need to remind them. Sensitivity there. This one happens to be one of my seedlings, and it was in the seedling class. This was a Jodie. Where my mum got the name Jodie from, I have no idea, but this is Jodie. Anyway, that won the Ernie Cartwell, so I was well chuffed with that. We did the ponds. It was a bit close this time. We were getting a bit nervous. And luckily we didn't have to stage in stems, but I think probably that my absolute favourite bit was the collarettes in the collarette class, because there were all 3 of them were my seedlings. So Shenton at the back, Sheila's pinks in the middle, Comet at the front. I wouldn't won that. Right, there were no other entries, but if nobody else wants to turn up, that's their problem, isn't it? Any questions, anybody? Because that's the resume of Tracey and my daily plot.
You put the good work, Tracey. It was brilliant. Well done.
Well, I think you now see how easy a decision it was to make personality of the year. So, Tracey, that was absolutely
if you want
fantastic.
some collarette seed, hand them round.
Yeah.
It's got my phone number on the back.
One minute.
Speed date.
Are you sneaking off now? Tracey, that was absolutely fantastic. Can we have another round of applause for the personality of the year? So the seeds are going round.
John?
Right. Without further ado, we'll switch some computers off. And I can't see him. Where's Mr. Spencer gone?
He's here.
Oh, he's hiding, sorry. So the next